And Martin, we look ahead to 2016 with a great sense of hope and expectation, thanks largely to the achievements of you and the Ireland team in 2015. Can you sum up that year just gone by?
Well, yeah, I can really, from having a desperately poor Christmas last year. That really was a result of us losing to Scotland over at Celtic Park in November time, and thinking ahead, I'm talking professionally, thinking ahead then to the game against Poland in a few months' time. So that's a wretchedly long time to wait around for a game. I knew this anyway going into international management. This is what it's all about. They used to say, the old managers used to say, win before Christmas and then you're fine for a month or two. Lose the game and it's a long time. So yeah, so we had some ground to make up, and unfortunately, while we didn't lose that much ground, then draws against Poland and a draw against Scotland in June time were essentially putting us in the back foot. I never really gave up. I felt that we still had a big chance. It probably meant that we would have to take 9 out of 12 points from the last 3 games, which is exactly what we did. But at that stage, and I also felt that Scotland's game in Georgia would be tough for them. So yeah, great turnaround, and we eventually get through. The game against Germany will, I think, live forever. And that gave us, even though a couple of days later we lost to Poland, that gave us the confidence to go into the playoffs and beat Bosnia, which was great for us. So if you're asking about a calendar year, it's worked out pretty well for all of us.
On a personal, because you bring up the fact that you've obviously made this transition from a very successful club manager now to national level. You've qualified at the first time of asking for a major finals. From your own point of view, is there some sense of vindication of the fact that when the FAI came calling, you said yes and you were able to make that almost seamless transition? Or do you still find it difficult? As you mentioned, the fact that, instead of waiting 3 days, sometimes you've got to wait 3 months for your next game.
Well, you make the points validly. I think that's absolutely right. First of all, I still find it difficult in that sense, but I wouldn't be the only one. So this is only from my viewpoint, that it's the length of time between matches is exceptionally long. Having said that, once you have the team for that, for those, let's say 6 or 7 days before a game, and then there's two games in quick succession, it very much has a club feel to it again. You know, that when you're actually, they feel as if the players belong to you. No, I think that you mentioned about the vindication. I think that's right. I think it's always a case of trying to prove people right if they have backed you, or prove people wrong if they have been forcefully against you. And yes, I did feel a sense of that. And actually, when the final whistle against Bosnia in the second game, I felt all sorts of emotions: relief that we had done it, sharing in the great delight that the fans had, and that was immediately surrounding me. And obviously that word that you've used, vindication, that John Delaney and the board had put some faith in me to try and restore a bit of confidence and a bit of self-belief about the team again. And yeah, I think all of those things seem to come to fruition. So essentially it was good, and I was delighted that it happened.
You don't miss the daily grind enough to go back to it anytime soon, tell us though.
Do you know what? I'm actually looking forward to the next couple of months, and it's really good. And I actually felt that it would be exactly that. If we could qualify, heaven knows, Christmas would be nice. It would be a nice time of the year, and then the build up to the games, the couple of friendly matches that we might have in March time would be great. Another friendly game against Holland, which would be fantastic, and then we're into the Euros. So yes. I don't want it to pass too quickly, because at my time of life, I don't want the months to just fly in, but great to look forward to, and all the backroom staff feel exactly the same.
There's a multitude of things that we could pick out from the qualifying campaign in the year just gone by. Well, I'll touch on a few of them. I mean, let's go back to October, the game in Gelsenkirchen against the Germans, which finished 1 each. I mean, at that point, we've got 7 points from our opening 3 games. We're top of the table. We're 3 points clear of rivals who we think, it's going to be between us and Poland and Germany. We've built up a real head of steam. what a night for John O'Shea on his 100th cap. I mean, that will live long in the memory, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think all of those points are absolutely right to mention. I think you just forgot to mention that I always felt that Scotland were rivals as well too. And when the group was first put out on paper way back in Nice some months before that, I actually felt, well, Georgia could be anything. You know, I've played against I've managed against some Georgian players when I was in Scotland. Very, very talented players. Wee bit moody, but talented nevertheless. And they could be anything. And so I'd never really excluded them from proceedings at all. But as you mentioned, we've got 7 points in the board at that time. And we had taken 3 points against Georgia in the opening game, which I still think is as important as any match that we've played in the group stages, and then to go and get a point away from home against the world champions, and considering it happened with John scoring in the last minute.
Yeah. Do you allow yourself to kind of think on nights like that when John O'Shea pops up with an unbelievable, like a penalty box predator finish from a corner in stoppage time on his 100th cap? You know, it's fairy tale stuff. Do you kind of think, you know what, this could be our year?
No,
stuff like that starts to happen.
No, I don't. Probably closer to the end, I might think. I've just mentioned there that I think Aidan McGeady's goal against Georgia was as important as any goal. At that time, it gave us 3 points instead of 1 point, and those points are very, very important. But if you're asking me that evening, when we've got 7 points, John has scored the goal, do I think this is it for us? I think it's too early in the tournament to be making big calls like that. What it did, you quite rightly mentioned, it gave us a great start. Then the next game against Scotland, we're going into it with plenty of confidence, and that becomes a setback because
what do you think happened at Parkhead? I mean, in terms of the game, the players' kind of mindset, there was an awful lot of stuff involved around the fringes of the game. Talk about Aidan McGeady, James McCarthy, various stuff peripheral to the football, and we kind of anticipated that it would be this frenetic, fractious kind of derby game, and so it turned out, albeit won by a set piece where Ireland kind of maybe switched off for seconds, and that cost us the game. But was there more to it? Was it just a poor performance, or?
Well, there was much made about it before the game, about the match being played at Celtic Park, and possibly an advantage for us because we had made it. Aidan McGeady had played for us. I played for Celtic, and I had managed Celtic, and we had great days there. I never felt that for a moment. In fact, I'd preferred the game to be at Hampden, which I think is much less atmospheric. And I knew the Scotland crowd would be right behind the team. In fact, Aidan took an awful lot of stick that particular evening. And I think eventually, regardless of what people say, it might affect performance a little bit. No, so I did not want the game at Celtic Park. Perhaps I didn't want it at Ibrox either, but certainly I just felt that Hampden might be less atmospheric, and the Scotland crowd were right behind their team that evening. It was also it was essentially a club game played at a frenetic level, or frenetic pace, and there was nothing between the sides. So I don't know whether an awful lot went wrong. We didn't create a great deal in the game, neither did Scotland at the end of it. And we're sitting there with about 13 minutes left in the game thinking a point will be a decent result.
Yeah.
And they scored the goal from a set piece, as you mentioned. We hit the bar towards the end of the game. It just didn't happen for us. But it does put you on the back foot for a while.
And as you said at the top, it's almost like a winter of discontent there. You've got so much to kind of mull over. Largely negative, rightly or wrongly, but it's a defeat against our rivals. You've got to wait till March to Poland to come to the Aviva. That's not going particularly well until such times as Shane Long manages to stab home another injury time goal. In this group, I mean, injury time goals, late goals were so vital. Is that kind of indicative of the team spirit that everyone talks about, this team that was developing? I think it was an evolution. I'm not sure that it was there from the get-go, because the team is evolving, the selections that you're making are changing, and all of a sudden it just seems that there's this habitual kind of never say die attitude.
Well, I think that was pretty evident. I think if you score a late goal in one of the games, people say, well, that just happens. If you score it in two, then there might be something about it. And if you keep scoring late goals, then I do believe that while it doesn't prove your theories, it does actually show that there is a never say die spirit about the side. That's right. Actually, the Poland game, we conceded an early goal in the match, and it wasn't just we had to wait until the last moment to get the equalising goal, but we put an enormous amount of pressure on them, particularly in the second half of the game. It totally belonged to us. In fact, we were actually, while there was a sense of relief at getting an equalising goal and the game hadn't run out on us, we actually was a bit of disappointment in the dressing room. But the fact is that we didn't get all 3 points. Now that put us in a situation where the Scotland game became so important.
Do you remember what you said at half-time in the Poland game? Because as you rightly say, for possibly even an hour of that game, there was a lot of the characteristics that we showed in the Scotland game away evident again. It was almost as though the players didn't have a sense of freedom. There wasn't that kind of gung-ho attitude, because at that stage 1-0 down to Poland, I mean, really, we're very close to the game's up if we lose that.
Oh, well, but isn't that the nature of group football? And I've been there. I've experienced these things as a player. I've experienced them as a manager as well too at European level, particularly with Celtic, where there are big moments in matches that can define things. You had mentioned earlier, would that goal in Gelsenkirchen define it? Yeah, it certainly did have some definition eventually when you get through, and an important goal for us. But it's littered with moments like that, and I just that I'll take you back. By the end of the Scotland game in the Aviva Stadium, we had played 6 matches. We're definitely on the back foot. Because Scotland are now in front of us. They have 2 points advantage on us and a better head-to-head. So effectively 3 points. We have to make that up in 4 games going. I'd never given up. And it wasn't just a bravado in front of the cameras. I genuinely believed it, because the games that we had, while difficult ahead of us, Scotland had difficult games. Poland looked as if they were in a proper position now to take second place. The Germans were always going to win it because they're the best side in it, and we had this fight in our hands. But there are moments in games that, as you say earlier, that can define things. Putting them all together, as I look back on it, I could give you 7 or 8 moments in matches, and one's early on, and one's probably more importantly later on, that had a monumental effect on the outcome of us getting there.
And the one that no one will ever forget is, of course, Shane Long against the Germans. I mean, that came about, as you're saying, these little permutations. Georgia go and beat Scotland. We beat Georgia thanks to John Walters. We'll talk more about him in a moment. But again, it's that man Shane Long against the world champions. I mean, it's not remotely an exaggeration to say, I mean, that was a seminal night in Irish sport, let alone football. I mean, that roar at the Aviva Stadium, I don't think it had been heard since the Dutch game, like 14 years previous. I mean, that you must have felt the electricity, the excitement. The tide was turning.
Well, I do. I get goosebumps now actually thinking about it. The atmosphere was terrific that evening. We were playing the world champions, which in itself brings something, and we were the underdogs. We were fighting every single minute of the game to get something out of it. I thought in the first half, I think that they overwhelmed us in many aspects, certainly with their passing play, which you sometimes expect. They overwhelmed better sides than us, and that's why they're world champions. I thought in the second half that we got a bit of courage to start playing a little bit ourselves, to be a wee bit more confident with the ball. And let's get some passing movements going, and let's try and develop something in the game, and just don't be scared of it. If you're beaten in a match and have not really had a proper go, then you'll never forgive yourself. So we did get into it in the second half. You talked to me about the game, and something that I look back on. There were 7 or 8 minutes in that match before Shane Long scores. I didn't realise that Scotland had gone 2-1 ahead against Poland. That if those results stay like that, we're effectively out. So that's how close you can come to it. But those are important moments. Teams who have won World Cups have been on the edge of defeat in matches before. The Germans who won the World Cup out in Brazil, they were in terrible pressure in some of the matches, I think in the last 16 in the quarterfinals, before they eventually thumped Brazil in the semis. So there are big moments in the games. Fondly to look back on, of course, if you've been successful. Desperate to look back on if you haven't been.
And possibly kind of ironic, funny, coincidental that it happens from a long ball, and a little bit of a nod to an age-old Irish football tradition. Randolph just straight down the pitch and Shane Long scores.
Well, of course, and that is a point. I think, like everything else, which brings me to a wider viewpoint of it. I think that what we're trying to do here at grassroots level is develop a player who is very comfortable with the ball. You'll only do that from a very early age, and it's great that it's going to happen, so that the Irish, at some stage or other, in the next couple of generations, have players that are able to live with the class players of European football or world football, but also retain that essential ingredient, that Irishism, that never say die spirit, that great desire to stay in the game and to win, which we actually have on our side. We lack certain things in the team. We've got through. We have some players who can also play as well too, but eventually, maybe in a couple of generations to come, that we have the whole package. At this minute, of course, we don't, but we don't want to lose that part of the game that still defines us as a nation. I think that's still important.
When you're talking about players comfortable with the ball, who kind of, I mean, you could be talking of 3 or 4 certainly that stand out within this squad that are a little bit more naturally gifted than others. Robbie Brady would fit that category, of course. He was in the fog in Zenica against in the first leg of the playoff, scored the goal. He's really, really crucial to this squad. When he's on the ball at the Aviva or in any game, you can sense that something might well happen. He's a creative player. Will a lot of our success going forward, and potentially in the Euros, depend on how much we get him into the game, if we're able to play him in his best position where he can influence the game, create goals, score goals?
Well, I think there are a number of points that you've hit on there. First of all, there is an evolution about our side, and where I take a bit of delight in is the fact I can see players actually progressing under us. The likes of Jeff Hendrick becoming a better player. The likes of Brady, young Brady, who started off, who's got a lot of talent, but he was actually, when I first came to the squad, he arrived to say hello and was back because he had a number of injuries. He's got over those injuries. Those type of people, absolutely. You're talking about young Brady there, trying to get him into the game. I think the more you start learning about football and the more that you can improve, then you get yourself into games as well too. So you have a responsibility to do that. What I've liked about the squad, both young and old, is that there is even now this intensity about them, which I really enjoyed. That has certainly not been missing since I've come in here, and also their willingness to want to learn something. And I actually feel that, and please, not boasting in any manner, I think that I've got something to offer them, and I certainly think that Roy Keane has something to offer them. And between both of us, if we can't improve some of these players, we probably shouldn't be doing the job.
And would you also allow yourself to kind of take credit for the evolution of Wes Hoolahan, both in the group and as a player? Because he's somebody who, we like to talk about him as Irish football supporters. He was overlooked for quite a period of time. He is, in essence, in that kind of number 10 role, if you like, our linchpin, our most creative player. But when you look back through the games in the group, I think he only started one of the first 4 and then was only on the bench once in the next 8 games. So did he kind of develop into a more and more important player? Did we play a more creative style of football in the latter stages of the group?
Well, again, but by the time that I've answered your question, you could go forever and a day. First of all, Wes Hoolahan should take credit for the evolution of his particular game under my regime, for want of a better word. I think he should do that there, because he is a creative player, absolutely right. He is not. He is now 33 years of age, and he hasn't been everyone's favourite player either at international level or at club level. That he would have to maybe asked himself a question or two about whether that's the case or not. He's certainly got a load of talent, and it's great, and particularly when we're playing matches where we have to force the issue at times, and we have to try and create something aside. We need creative players in our team. We tried, for instance, at the start of the competition, we had a very, very physically fit Aidan McGeady playing for us. McGeady is multi-talented, and he has to be properly fit. He hasn't played much club football now in the last year, and he'll have to do something about that himself. But he was our creative talent in the side. Then Wes came in, took over in that little role, played very well, particularly matches here at the Aviva when we had to try and create something for ourselves. And sometimes it is horses for courses, if that's the case. We need creativity in the team. We need to be as strong as we possibly can. I think you have to take all ingredients into consideration.
Do you take umbrage, or do you get annoyed by the fact that, in the press at times people will say, well, we know that Wes Hoolahan is integral, Aidan McGeady, creative players like that give us something in the final third, etc., that we don't normally have when they're not there. They might say that when push comes to shove and it's a game we can't afford to lose, that you might look upon them as luxury players and therefore drop them to the bench. And
I don't think that is the case. There's an awful lot more goes into that. If I was to listen to everybody picking my team, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. And if I would listen to people who actually really, that I don't have a phenomenal amount of time for, I would just pull the covers over, if that's the case. People who have got a say here in the game, who have had a say for years and years, who really do not actually have a clue, genuinely don't have a clue. And my experience, my judgment of players, I think is as good as any. I'm happy enough to say that there. And I know the players, I get to know the players. And when I have trust in players, then those who have worked with me will tell you then that there's nothing better than that, to have the full trust of players, and where I know that they can go out and do some things in the side that other people are not capable of doing. John Walters, for instance. John Walters has been our outstanding player. There have been a number of very, very fine performers in the 12 matches that we've played. He's been outstanding. You wouldn't turn around and say that John has the same natural talent as some of the others, but he's the heartbeat of the side, or has been anyway. Hopefully everything goes all right for the next 6 months. He's been the heartbeat of the side, and he does things in the game for us that go unnoticed. But he does some big things for us, like getting crucial goals for us, and his whole attitude pervades the dressing room. And that's very, very important. There are lots of ingredients that go to make up a team. If you're asking me about whether I refrain from playing skillful players when it's important, I never heard so much drivel in my life. And I'll tell you why. Because I've managed Celtic, where I've brought Celtic players on. I've managed Leicester City, where I played wide players all the time. There's nothing I like more than creativity, because creativity will win games for you. And at Aston Villa, it's what I spent my time doing, is buying creative players mostly. I have got great respect for defenders who can defend properly and who can do things that defenders should do. But in talking about creativity, absolutely not. I know my team. I have a fair idea about it. I've certainly got a better idea than some pundits who don't even attend matches and are making a judgment from a studio. And I don't mind. I really genuinely don't mind a pundit having a say. If he's backing it up with some cogent argument or something that he feels that might make sense. But if he makes a judgment on something that's factually incorrect, then obviously you're going to have to question it or ignore it, or both.
We've been talking about these little moments throughout the campaign, the Gelsenkirk and John O'Shea with the goal. I mean, the the second leg of the playoff and the 2 goals from John Walters was a nice little moment for him because, as you rightly identified and everyone knows, he was the standout player. He's very much the embodiment of the team. You said the heartbeat of this side, in fact. So very nice for him to kind of bookend the campaign in such dramatic fashion at the Aviva with both those goals. Yeah,
well, he took the penalty. There's an awful lot of pressure on him taking the penalty. He stepped up and took it as if he had scored 35 out of 35. Before that. So yeah, terrific, absolutely brilliant effort by him. His second goal at a time when we needed it, because you just knew that Bosnia would exert a lot of pressure on us towards the end of the game. They brought on another couple of centre forwards to the match, one who's a tallish lad playing in the Italian league, and I knew that from watching it, they will go directly, despite all their creativity in their side. They will put it in there, and they might fall upon something. They might score with 6 or 7 minutes to go and make life difficult for you. And so John's second goal in the game, expertly taken, was just another big moment. We don't like to do things the easy way, and this group we've got in the summer is particularly difficult. And the dust has settled now in the draw. You've had time to kind of let it seep in. Are you optimistic? Obviously, it's going to be very, very tough, but you seemed enthused by it in terms of, well, we've got a lot of marquee names to play now. We're putting ourselves up against the best. Well, yeah, my viewpoint now, some days later, is that if I'd been picking the draw, I wouldn't have picked those teams. Fine, because I feel as if Italy are essentially a pot 1 team themselves. So really, we're playing 2 pot 1s. Belgium at this minute are rated the top team in the world. I mean, we all have a debate about that, but they're certainly in the top 5 or 6 if that's the case. Got a lot of good players, both defensively, midfield, and in their forwards. Really, really strong as well too. So they've got a lot going for them. And Sweden are Sweden. They know their way around tournaments. They always seem to qualify. Somebody told me, I didn't realise until I said, but should have done that. I think this is their 5th consecutive European tournament they've qualified for. So they know their groups. But I treat this year as I did at club level with injuries. On a Friday, I think that we've got a team organised for the game on a Saturday. My physiotherapist comes in and tells me we've picked up 2 injuries, or one of the players has not recovered in time when we thought by Monday that he was going to recover. And yeah, I curse my luck and then get on with it. And that's
so
exactly...
even at like a 6 or 7 month remove, I mean, you don't have a strategy. You're not going to say, okay, game 1, the idea, given the way the opposition play, will kind of set up this way. I mean, it's pretty much the guys will go into camp. You'll have played 3 or 4 games between now and then, so you'll have looked again at players. 1 or 2 fresh players might come in who were injured during much of the campaign, and then you just kind of manage it on a week-to-week basis.
Oh, and I don't know whether you're talking about our particular plans or whether you're talking about plans for the opposition. By the time that we get to play Sweden, we'll know everything about Sweden. The players should not to know everything about Sweden, as if we don't already. But it's worth refreshing. All about the Italian side, and very obviously all about the Belgian side. Those things taken into consideration, then we will have our own plans worked out to how we are going to counteract their strengths, and obviously working on our own. But if you're talking now at this minute, yeah, it's I have to wait to see whether some of our very fine players come through injury free. That's very important. Again, can't do anything about it. It's in the lap of the gods. But the first game against Sweden, I don't care, that becomes very, very important. A very, very important game for us. It'll be played in France, it'll be played in the Stade de France, and we will have a massive support. And I'm hoping that we can feed off that great support that we will have. It's not to say that Sweden won't have either, because they're well supported at these tournaments. But we hopefully will be ready for it. You're asking me some months in advance. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and enjoy the next month or two, because enjoyment in football doesn't come around too often.
You mentioned the fans, and everyone's over the Christmas break putting their travel plans in place for France. I mean, we will go en masse. We will be the best supported team. I've no shadow of a doubt. We proved that at the last European Championships, during which we were so well supported. It courted a little bit of controversy. Of course, Roy said, look, we shouldn't just come along for the sing-song. I got the sense there was something slightly lost in translation with what he intended it to mean. It was taken up as a criticism of the fans. I'm not quite sure it was that. But this time around, is there anything we can learn from the last championships as a group of players? I mean, I noticed one or two of the senior players, John O'Shea in particular, saying almost at the final whistle at the Bosnia game, it's almost a shot at redemption, because at the last finals, we kind of were paralysed by fear of failure, I think, more than anything.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I remember watching some of the games, but I don't know the inside story about it. And I've not really asked players. What I do know is that you got there, and the expectation became very, very high. It was suddenly, you I think almost to a man. I'm talking about media, journalists, everything. Were giving points to games. If we win this game, then we, even to the point about maybe getting a draw against Spain and things like this here. I think there has to be a touch of realism attached to everything. What we'll do is this. I'll get back again and say it, and I'm going to say it for my final time before January, and it'll be this. Yes, the draw is difficult. Of course it's difficult. The games are difficult. You'd have to say that Italy, who are a top nation and have so much experience in tournaments on true, and Belgium, top side, and Sweden actually, they're tough sides. Okay, that's gone now. It's all over. We'll treat the games accordingly. Can we win some of these matches? I think we can, because I thought that we could beat some of the teams that we did do in the way to France. We had big matches, and we've come through some tests. These are big, massive tests for us. And closer to the time, I want us to be as prepared physically and mentally and as well as we possibly can. And then everything else then will take care of itself.
I think people are kind of semi-obsessed with your relationship with Roy. I'd like to touch on that. Possibly the nicest moment, over and above the fact that we've qualified and we're going to France, was that touchline embrace. The spontaneity and genuine nature when you hugged each other on the sidelines and the beaming smiles in front of the full house. A great moment. How would you describe your relationship with Roy?
Well, it was good actually, because Roy doesn't smile too often, and that does help. And he has an image to keep up as well too, of course, as being the growler.
Is that a fair image?
No, sometimes it's absolutely spot on, and other times it can be a wee bit misplaced. He's excellent company for a start. Not that that's really important in the scheme of life. I don't know, and he has been very important to us. He is an iconic figure, and not only in Irish football, and not only in British football, but I'd have to say in the world football. The number of people that come up to him now, he's retired a number of years, and the number of people all over the world who come to him to ask for autographs and photographs, it's great to see. He's not been forgotten at all. Why should he be? He was a world-class player, despite what Sir Alex Ferguson says, because he drove that side, not for a month, not for 2 months, for about a decade. And he drove them on to success after success. They had great players playing for Manchester United, but none of them was as forceful as he was. So he deserves that reputation of being a great player. He wants to go and prove himself in management. He did really fine at Sunderland, and I think he learned a lot from the Ipswich thing. We seem to get on reasonably well. That could blow up any given minute, or the way things happen. I think I'm a generation and a half in front of him. So, and I think he allows me to occasionally pontificate about subjects I haven't got a clue about. So he listens to them, and we get on fine. Backroom staff really do get on fine. But more importantly than that, we have to try and put all that energy and enthusiasm that we both have for it into the team. And so far, so good. Who knows what might happen in the future? It's
kind of sounding like you're describing a slightly fractious relationship between two people who...
No, it's not. Any relationship can
Yeah.
be. Any,
Well,
at any
two
given
like-minded
stage.
people who are quite similar
Yeah,
can bump heads.
I think we're like-minded in certain things. I think we're poles apart in other things at the end of the day. But that's characters. Am I delighted that he's come on board? Absolutely. And do you know what? I think certainly the backroom staff are as well too. But most importantly, are the players. Yes.
Yeah, because it must have been, I won't call it a risk, because you do a risk assessment, and obviously you would have established at the get-go, because it was an immediate decision, one that you were absolutely keen from day one, was possibly a deal breaker in terms of saying yes or no to the job. Therefore, you must have assumed that his role with the players would outweigh any potential downside or stresses in a working relationship. I mean, what's his most valuable asset? You've described him as an icon of the world game and so on. But
here's the one that I probably would have felt might have got some difficulty during the time, and it would have been Roy as a manager, young manager as he was at Sunderland and at Ipswich, and he had been making decisions. This is the point. Now he wasn't going to make the final decision. He was going to put forward his viewpoint, and well respected as that is, absolutely respected, but he wasn't making the final decision. And I always felt that was something that if you've been a manager once, and regardless of what age you are, whether you're young or old, and you've been used to making some decisions, then to sit, and then finally, or someone else is making the final decision over something, and perhaps occasionally you may be disagreeing with you. I thought that might cause a problem. Not just it could cause a problem with any assistant manager, but certainly maybe somebody with Roy who would want the final decision. That actually has not been a problem. Will he go and manage again? Absolutely. Will he go and take and I think that actually this has actually been quite good for him, just to sit out, someone older, being in the forefront of things like that there. Not that he has not been in the forefront, he absolutely has. But the very fact, just at the end of that game against Bosnia, where he almost didn't want to take any credit for what's happening. We know he's been excellent. He's been excellent for me. He's been excellent for the team. And I believe he's been excellent for the nation.
Given the choice, naturally enough, you would keep him on the other side of the Euros as well, because a lot of the speculation is that the timing would be right, irrespective of what we achieve or otherwise at the Euros, that he may move on, that those kind of itchy feet that you're describing.
Who knows? Who knows what might happen? Who knows? Who knows what might happen in 2 weeks' time, never mind anything else. He went to, during my time here, he had the opportunity to go and manage. He then had the opportunity to go and be an assistant manager, which he took, and he thought that working with Paul Lambert at the time at Aston Villa would give him, would have him close to the Premier League, where he could still see players as well too. But it was, and I think it's a difficult old job. Particularly, he didn't have any summer break as well. He went straight from us in our tour of America straight to America again. I think it was to join up with Paul and Aston Villa. There was no real break time, and I felt that this was almost a different role. Fine to be an assistant to me at international level. Then he was working on a day-to-day basis with Paul, and I think then it opened his eyes to certain things. And he's come back into the fold again. He'll go and manage again, but as I said, who knows what might develop in the time. And I'm quite sure that he will be very successful.
Your own situation, of course, is up for review in terms of your contract. The signs seem to be that will be sorted sooner rather than later, possibly in January. Are you in a position now with this Irish team that you're part of a process that you want to stick with, that you're happy with the squad of players you have, with being able to put your imprint on the team? You're taking us to a finals. You would suggest that you would like to kind of leave a legacy here and stay for the long term? Well,
contrary to certain opinions a way back, when I took the job in the first place, any deliberation on my part was not to not have this job, which is a great honour to manage the Republic of Ireland. Genuinely, it's a great, great honour to do so. And to follow in the footsteps of some excellent managers in the past, it's really great. But it was making the decision to go from the possibility of being at club level, which I had done, which was a day-to-day involvement, and to take that and to then work in something that, while it's still very, very much a full-time job, it meant that you weren't working with players on a day-to-day thing. And I've talked to other managers who've had more experience at international level than myself, and who are older than me, and who all have felt the same thing. Spoke to Roy Hodgson about it. He still finds it a wee bit strange that he's not going to work on a Monday, or going to work in the sense of not going in. He's going to an office perhaps at times rather than going to a training session. So those things do take a wee bit of time to get used to. Do I enjoy the job? Absolutely. I enjoy the job even more now that we've qualified, like everything else, and the trials and tribulations over the last couple of years, certainly since the competition started, the criticism, as you've mentioned earlier, the criticism been quite severe. But then I worked in Scotland for a number of years, so, and I was nearly going to say it was pretty severe then, but you boys can match them any given time.
Yeah. And when you over Christmas, when you ignore those empty vessels making a lot of noise, some more adroit in terms of their punditry than others, what do you do to kind of relax and unwind and close them all out and say, okay, well, this is Martin O'Neill time?
Well, funnily enough, I had a daughter who got married there just about, as we've done this year, about 10 days ago. And I do know what? I actually thought the moment that we qualified, when that final whistle went against Bosnia, I thought, I'm actually going to enjoy this wedding now. Because that was hanging over, and while I'm sure it would be great, and it turned out it was great, really great, that was like almost like the second thought that came in. I'm actually going to enjoy this wedding. I'm not going to be morose. I'm not going to have another useless Christmas. My Christmases are never useless, I must admit, but and I'm making more of it than I say. But what I'm talking about is to say there was going to be some enjoyment attached to it. So in terms of this, yeah, I think there's a struggle with the in-laws as to who is getting my daughter for Christmas, whether she comes to us or whether she goes down there, and that'll be interesting. That'll be a big decision to see where her loyalties lie, and whether I ever speak to them again or not. So Christmas is fine. It's my favourite time of the year. I love it, and it's also my daughter's favourite time of the year. I really do love it. I love it, and I hopefully, health-wise, if I stay okay, then I'll enjoy it this year. But particularly to know, and the thing that I possibly missed out on, that I have seen in the past, the Republic of Ireland fans going en masse to these events that they've qualified for. And you know what? I'm going to be part of this now. And I think that's the great thing. And I would look forward to that. And that is something that will stand with me over the next couple of months as I start to visualize France and what it's going to be like. And I think that will be the great thing. And I'm actually part of this crowd going there to France. You mentioned there to enjoy themselves. I think there'll be enjoyment of that there, but we'll go with a wee bit of determination to try and do well, and try and maybe try and rectify things. Although that's not the important thing to me. Try and play well, and see how we get on. The games are difficult, but closer to the time, I'll probably be back up to my very upbeat best and think we're capable of winning it.
Delighted, Martin, to hear that you're going to enjoy your Christmas, and I think it's fairly safe to say that a lot of people are going to enjoy their Christmases a lot more thanks to what you've done, what your team has done.
No, I appreciate that, Conor. Thank you very much.
We're looking forward to 2016 with great hope and expectation. I think it's going to be great. Merry Christmas and every success, continued success in 2016.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Okay,
Much appreciated.